Hi, I'm Clate Mask, and on the Conquer the Chaos podcast, I talk with inspiring business owners about what it takes to build a great business and a great life. That means more money, more time, more control, more impact, more freedom. So keep listening to hear the tough lessons they learned so you don't have to repeat them. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. I'm Clate Mask, co-founder and CEO of Keap, and your host for the Conquer the Chaos podcast. And today I've got a friend, a local friend, someone here in Arizona that I've known for many years, who runs an amazing company that we'll talk a little bit about. Russ Perry, great to have you with us. How you doing?
Clate, it's been a long time coming for other conversation, but super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So Russ is an amazing entrepreneur. I'm gonna brag on you a little bit for a second here, Russ, and then I'm gonna let you tell everybody what you do. Russ runs a company called Design Pickle, and Russ is a dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur, is a creator, and is somebody who recognizes that great creative is really important to building your business. And Design Pickle helps solve that problem for many businesses. And in fact, I'm going to let Russ tell a little bit about it, but we've got kind of a fun story we'll share about the intersection of our companies. So Russ, why don't you just take just a second more and say what Design Pickle does and how you guys serve your customers?
Yeah, so Design Pickle is the leading creative services subscription company. So what that means is you can come to our website, sign up, and get a professional creative to help you with pretty much anything visual, motion, static. We support formats of video, all tools, Canva, Figma, you name it. And the needle we thread are businesses who, like most, need new content all the time, whether it's for advertising, marketing, internal, but they may not have enough resources to either go build their own team, which is a process, hiring, interviewing, bringing that on, or they might already have some creatives or people that they use. They just need more help. And that whole unit increment of a new full-time employee or resource just doesn't make sense for where they're at, you know? And so we can come in to teams of 0 to teams of 100,000. We've worked with every company size there is out there, and add in that extra creative output. And what's really unique about our model versus hiring like a freelancer yourself is we've created an entire software experience around that. So from your requests to managing feedback to versioning to even the AI tools we've now put into our application, it's all in one spot, which makes it really efficient for creativity. You know, a lot of people don't realize, but you lose a lot of time when all of those steps are in different places and different tools. And so we've put it all together, and it allows people to just focus on the work, on creation, and for our clients to do what they do best, which usually is not advertising, Facebook designs, etc.
Yeah, and you put it all together for them in a subscription model, which I think is an interesting thing. Say a little bit about that.
Well, this was like built, around me being a really naive entrepreneur back in the day. I was listening to all of these podcasts on this crazy concept called recurring revenue when I was an agency owner. And I was like, wait, what is this? You get paid monthly, roughly the same amount, and credit cards are just charged, and you don't have to chase down people and go after bills and like negotiate every month of when you're going to get paid. So I was in between my agencies, which I started my creative career, branding, advertising, launch campaigns, but I was doing a lot of things. I was like the one size fits all marketing consultant, and just so happens that I had a lot of these design requests from my clients, about 10 freelance clients that were like, we're going to a trade show. We need all the assets, the business cards, the graphics. We're relaunching our website. We need the images, the designs. We have some new ads we're doing for promotion this holiday season, whatever it was. And so I was like, this is like a lot to juggle as a freelancer. How about I put it all into a tool? At the time, it was just a standalone third-party tool. My designers can operate inside of that, get it done, and send it away without a lot of me trying to be the middleman inside of it. And that ended up being really successful, like so successful it was working without me. And then, so I was like, hey, I might have a business here. And then this thing about recurring revenue and subscription, I was like, what if you could just sign up for creativity like you do Netflix or Keap or whatever? You could just sign up and start.
Yeah.
Like that
Yep.
wasn't a thing 10 years ago or 9.5 years ago. It was like you had to meet somebody, you had to interview them, you had to review portfolios, you had to talk to them, it was like a lot of work to work with
Yeah.
somebody. So like
Right.
maybe I could make it easy for me for payments, easy for clients to get started. And that was like a crazy idea then. But now, that we see a lot of subscription services. So we started
Yep.
something.
Yeah. Well, I love it because I know a lot of our customers have used your services, and I love the subscription model, obviously, because it makes it easy on both sides, like you called out. But I also love the fact that once an entrepreneur and the business recognizes that they need more creative services, it really is a heavy burden to try to go figure out what they need. And so being able to try it, get something on a subscription basis like you've enabled is really cool. And one thing that I've found that I'm sure our clients recognize is that you never have enough creative.
Hmm.
There's always a need for more. There's always a need for whether it's copy or video or graphics or you name it. There's always a need for more. And so I love that you guys have put that together. And for all of our audience listening, you got Design Pickle has gone from a couple of creatives to now about 600, if I understand right. I think that's about the latest number that you guys have.
Yeah.
So you've really grown your business, grown the resources that you make available to your clients, and it's a pretty cool story. Now tell us the beginning of it, because this is it's a fun story for me to hear because
Yes.
of the way that our companies have come together. As I referenced, just shared with people, a lot of our customers have used your services over the years. But tell us the launch story.
Okay, so we launched in January of 2015, and everyone asks, like, well, Russ, how did you launch? How did you get success? And I always tell them two things. One, I I launched Bootstrap. So I needed to make money from the beginning.
Yeah.
There was no ability to run in the red. So I priced it the way that I thought would make money, and thankfully it was a success. And then pretty much for the first 2 years of Design Pickle, I was the quintessential, like, I got to use an appropriate word here, but I did anything and everything to market myself. I would write guest blog posts. It's like, you're a women's naturopath? Cool. I could figure out a way to weave in the message of Design Pickle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And about 3 or 4 months in, local to Arizona, as you guys, Keap was having their Icon event, formerly Infusionsoft Icon event,
Yep.
and I was like, well, hey, this seems perfect for me. I want to do marketing, and actually at an agency, but my agency I was doing a lot of trade shows, so I was kind of knew a thing or two about it. So I
Yeah.
reach out to your team, and they're like, sorry, all the booths are sold out. Yeah, can't find it. I was like, oh, darn it. I mean, this was like a month and a half before. I was like,
Yeah.
what can I do? What can I do? And I was like, you know what? What if I handed out pickles? Like people are kind of like, like into it. Maybe we'll see. And
Yeah.
I later learned that people either love pickles or hate pickles. No one has a neutral opinion of pickles. Um, but then your marketing team was like, well, here's the deal, Russ. You could do this, but you have to stay on this tiled area that we're having lunch. You can't
Yes. Right.
leave and walk around and market because that's against the rules or it'll, da da da. I was like, all right,
Well,
fine.
and to interject here, what you may not have known and what people may not have been aware is that we were doing the event in a convention center that was managed by unionized labor. So everything
Oh
we
yeah.
did at that conference was like scrutinized, and everything had to be done a certain way. We weren't allowed to touch a chair. We couldn't move. It was like it
Which
was like
which I'll come back to on the pickles really quick. But long story short, I was like, all right, well, I'm in Arizona. There's this very classic thing if you lived in the Southwest of these like Mexican popsicle carts. And there's these guys and they have little bells on them and they hand them out in parks and
yep,
stuff around. I grew up
yep,
in Tucson. They had them. So I was like, I'm going to get one of those. So I went to where they sold these. It's like the Costco of ice cream trucks. It's like if you need 2,000 Sonic the Hedgehog ice creams, like that's where you buy it. And there was one of these carts. So I asked the guy, I was like, how much to rent this? And he's like, like $100. I was like, that's awesome. Great. I'll be back. So the day of the event, I come back to get the cart and he's like, it's $100 if you buy $2,000 worth of ice cream. And I'm like, got a truck outside. I'm going to the convention center. And I'm like, I don't need this. So I was like, well, how much to buy the cart? And he's like, 650. And so quickly I do the math and I'm like, if Design Pickle fails, I could probably go on Craigslist and rent this for parties and make my money back. Okay. And so to the union, I found these prepackaged pickles locally that were like 30 or 50 cents a thing wholesale. I couldn't bring food into the convention center, and they were wanting to charge me like $7 a pickle for the same
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
So this is the first time I'm ever publicly confessing this, Clay. I've never admitted this publicly on record.
True confessions on the podcast.
I bought like 50 with the union guys and just snuck in the rest myself. Like these illegally smuggled, non-unionized pickles.
I love the story. Contraband pickles. It's an even better story than I thought.
Yeah. And so the final icing on the cake was I found this random pickle costume on Amazon and I dressed up as the pickle. And so for 2 days, I was in the lunch area handing out these illegal pickles from my super expensive pickle cart that had our marketing wrapped around it. And one of my most iconic photos with a former team member of yours and a friend, Greg Head, and he and I took a selfie, like the head of marketing at the time, and it was so exciting.
I love it.
And this whole story lines up to something for your listeners. Ridiculous creative things work because not only did we sell probably no less than 20 accounts at that single event, 10xing our ROI, but to this day, 9 years later, I still get people signing up for Design Pickle who said, I remember you dressing up as the pickle. And this is my whole philosophy now with my personal brand and everything I'm doing with Design Pickle is I think creativity is one of the it will be the only strategic weapon you have in the years to come when it's easy to create, the tools are faster, and using, being creative and working with creative professionals, I believe is like what's going to differentiate brands when it comes to marketing and competition and everything. But
couldn't agree more.
That's a legendary story. Now the pickle cart sits in our office and is like kind of like a little like shrine to that whole event.
Oh my gosh, Russ, that is amazing. And I definitely want to come back to your point about creativity is the competitive advantage, is what enables you to stand out. Because I totally agree. In the world that we're in, and increasingly moving into with automation and AI and all of the capabilities, like your creativity is what enables you to stand out. And so I want to come back to that. I want to share with you something from my side of your story, which I've never told you. So,
oh no.
so you're confessing the contraband pickles, which is awesome. I love it. And yes, that's the reason, by the way, that we stopped going to that venue, because it was too difficult to manage with the unionized labor. There were so many different things that we couldn't do, and we weren't able to break the rules quite the way you were. So I love that you did that. But here's the thing. I remember very distinctly going into that area, and there was all of this commotion around something, and I didn't know what it was. And then the crowd sort of parted at one point, and I saw your pickle, the pickle outfit, and I was like, "What's going on over there?" And they said, "Oh, some guy is handing out pickles," and so people are going over and getting free pickles, and he's talking to them, and anyway, and I didn't even know exactly what it was. Because the event,
a lot of people didn't. Because I was by myself and people were so crazy about the pickles, I couldn't even talk to them about Design Pickle. They were just like, I hear you have pickles. I want a pickle. And I was like, it was like I was giving away like free swag at a Suns game or something. I was like, here you go.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. Well, that was the commotion that I saw. Exactly. And so I asked what it was, and they were like, "Oh, they're giving out free pickles." And it wasn't until a couple years later that I knew what Design Pickle was and what you guys were doing. And I put together, oh my gosh, that was going on at Ikon. And then a few years later, you and I went to a Suns game together and you told
Yeah,
me the whole story and you kind
yeah.
of filled in some of the cracks. So I just, from my perspective as the CEO of the company that was putting on this event, you stood out in such a clear and obvious way. And that's not easy to do because you were in a sea of people and vendors and booths and all the stuff, and you totally stood out. And I love the fact that as an entrepreneur, you believed in your concept, you took the plunge, you spent the extra money, and then to get the 10x ROI at the event, and then 9 years later to have that continue. That is an amazing testament to your creative prowess, your understanding of how to rise above the crowd. Because everybody out there who's running a business, who's listening to this, is like dreams of the ideas that help them go viral or that enable the launch to just explode or enable their next thing they're dropping to take out. Everybody's thinking and dreaming of how to do that, and I want to get into your creative process a little bit and what you do, because that ability that you demonstrated that day at Ikon at our event that has paid off for you in spades over the years, and obviously you've done tons of things. That was just one little part of the launch event, but I think it was an important piece that got you going so that you could build a company that now has 600 creators that you're working with. So let's go to your point that you made at the tail end of that the creation, that being effective in creating is what enables you to stand out. What have you learned in your world as a creator, leading creators? Are there some principles? Are there some practices that people can grab onto so that they can help their brand, their business stand out more effectively?
Yeah, I mean, how much time do you have, Clate? Because I could do a whole 3-day workshop on it. But I do
Yeah.
think it ties into your 6 keys of success, because one of those keys is strategy.
Yep.
And I may be one of the first people on your show to advocate that creativity is a strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is something that I see and we all see as consumers. Like whenever, you're like, oh, what's a great, business that's successful and what do they do and all of these things. If you dial in to what they're doing, they're being creative. And
Yeah.
it's not always about visual. It's not always about design aesthetics. Like my pickle activation at Icon was janky. Like it was, what is this grown man doing in pickle and cartoon hands? But it was about being disruptive and being creative. And so I think like for me, this is one of the most underutilized parts of a full business strategy is how are we being creative? And that's because a lot of people think that creativity is just about, your brand visuals or your advertising assets. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm always advocating, I talk a lot about on my social channels, is like the more we are creative at all areas of our life, the more we use the muscle that then we can go into a room and problem solve and come up with innovations and shift and go in
Yeah.
different directions. And it's not natural for many people, but it is something that can be learned over time, as with any skill or knowledge set. It just takes practice. And I love it when I see creative problem solving inside of non-designery worlds, right? Where
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like distribution, marketing automation, copywriting, or whatever. Like that to me is like, yes, that's so awesome to see someone take a new way and a new approach. And like we talked about earlier, I think because the cost of content is dropping dramatically, like if we think of content as like a commodity, that
Mm-hmm.
before like the artisan blog post that took 3 weeks to write and it was like researched and done all of that and cost you thousands of dollars, now you can get something pretty close almost immediately, for
Yeah.
zero
Yeah.
to next to cost. The cost of content is dropping. So what then is going to be of value? It's going to be creativity. It's going to be unique ideas. It's going to be things that aren't just generated and regurgitated. And then that's what makes me really excited about what we're doing with Design Pickle is how then can we be the team that bring on to continue that path of creativity, and stand out and be different in the ways
Yeah.
that we can support.
Okay, we're going to keep this going, but first, a quick message for you. Conquer the Chaos listeners, let me talk to you straight for just a minute. You're running your business and it dominates your mind. It can be very difficult to take a step back and see what's needed to create balance in your business and your personal life, and to create great growth and development and progress in your business and personal life. One of the most powerful ways to gain the perspective that you need is to get away from things and immerse yourself in an environment where you're going to be inspired, where you can see possibilities, where you can create connections, and where you can learn and grow and develop. And I know of no better place for entrepreneurs than Keap's Let's Grow Summit. For years, we ran this conference as just an amazing mecca for entrepreneurship. And then, truth be told, for a few years, we didn't run it. We got back to it last year, and this year we're putting it on, and it is going to be awesome. I am so excited about this, and I want you as our listeners to not miss out on this event. It's going to be November 20th through the 22nd, downtown Phoenix, with the main days being the 21st and the 22nd. You can register for it by going to keap.com/Let's Grow Summit. That's keap.com/Let's Grow Summit. And you can take advantage of our early bird registration pricing, which expires the end of July. So if you are needing a reflection time, an opportunity to take a step back, gain greater perspective, inspiration, and most of all, see what automation, the fifth key to success, can do for your business, then make sure that you attend the Let's Grow Summit. Keap.com/Let's Grow Summit, November 20th through 22nd in Phoenix. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, now back to our chat. Oh man, so many things here to jump into, but just the first point you mentioned about creation as part of, being creative as part of strategy. I love that. You're so right. It's such an important part. When we just kind of get into a rut, it takes away the differentiation. If strategy at its core is about focusing on what you do best to differentiate from others, and if we don't apply creativity to it, we don't get that differentiation. You don't stand
Exactly.
out, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you call out that piece of it. I think that's super important. But I also want to emphasize, I've said many times on podcast episodes that when we're talking about Conquer the Chaos, we're talking about entrepreneurs who are by nature, we are creators. We are creative. Now,
Yes.
now maybe we're not as, sort of the typical artistic creators that sometimes we think of, but we do live in creation. That's what we do. We are, and I strongly believe we are born to do that. Everybody is born to create. And, unfortunately, education and institutions sort of pound it out of us and sort of stamp out a bunch of that. But entrepreneurs discover, we are in creation. That's what we do. So you made another point about that I want to grab onto, where you said, when we're creative in all areas of our life, of our lives, then we can get creative in the strategy and in our business so that we stand out. Say a little more about that, because I'm really fascinated by that because, as you know, I'm a big, when I talk about the 6 keys to success, I'm talking about success as defined by balanced growth within your in your business and personal life that produces freedom. And I kind of break down in the vision aspect of the keys of success, the 5 areas of life. You've got physical, spiritual, social, business, and financial. As an entrepreneur, those are kind of the 5 areas. And so I'm really fascinated by your point about when we're creative in all areas of our life. I immediately think of those 5 areas. Anybody else might think of just general areas of life. But what if you noticed that when you are igniting your creativity in one area of your life, it bleeds over into your strategy and into your business standing out?
Well, I'm going to give a quick example, and then I'll come back to that, because I think it's a good analogy. I think with like sports and training, we mentioned we're Suns fans. Those athletes aren't just playing basketball.
Let's just say this real quick. We are Suns diehard fans. For anybody that doesn't know, Russ has custom-made Suns shoes that when he and I went to a game together, they are like amazing custom-made Suns shoes. So he is a fan.
Every season, I have new ones.
I love it.
Shout out to Lace by Liv, Lace by Liv on Instagram. She's my homegirl. Give her a lot of love if you need custom shoes.
Hey,
So,
that alone is a great example of creativity in an area of your life as a
oh
passionate
yeah.
fan that
Well,
will bleed over into your business.
so real quick, athletes, they just don't shoot basketballs all day long. They just don't scrimmage all day long. They look at how do I become better in other areas, whether it's weightlifting, whether it's calisthenics and mobility and mindset and all of these things. That then the aggregate of that helps them be a better athlete for the games and for what matters. And I
Yeah.
think the same is true as entrepreneurs and leaders of our businesses. If we're just in a room all day long with the whiteboard trying to come up with ideas, we're gonna hit a wall at some point. And
Right.
so I personally believe that it's a lot less risk for me to like run some fun dad experiments with my kids and be creative and be silly and do whatever they do at all their different ages. I mean, I have 8, almost 9, 12, and 19, all daughters. So I have like
Okay.
a spread of interests and
Yes.
tolerance for my
Right.
shenanigans.
Right.
But that's like a safe place to be creative, which flexes the muscle. And then if
Hmm.
we do creative projects like making custom shoes, I'm not designing them, a professional is designing them, but
Yeah.
I'm being creative and I'm giving my inspiration. That flexes the muscle. And then
Yeah.
similarly in our lives and our belts, you take a trip somewhere new you've never been, and it forces you to get outside of your routines of the summer beach you've gone to for the last 10 years, flexes the muscle. And guess what? All of that then allows you to show up inside of your business, testing and working on this creative muscle in different ways. And all of a sudden, boom, I just had this idea. And
Yes.
and the final piece, which has been well documented with many great leaders, all of those things, while may not be connected to business, end up being very connected. So the more
Yeah.
you're doing these other things, the more you're like, Steve Jobs was always world renowned for his study of the arts and literature and architecture that he brought into hardware and
Yeah.
brought into that world. And so for me, it's like, what am I learning in these other areas that allow me to have more sort of, I forget, brain connections, whatever it is called,
Right.
that I'm like thinking differently, literally because I've had more experiences and I've challenged myself in those other areas. And so
Yeah.
that's always my advice to anyone who's like, I just am not a creative, like I just am not like that. The answer is like, yeah, maybe not today, but find small ways to do that outside of business. And all of a sudden, you're going to find that it's much more fluid and smooth to quote unquote be creative inside of business.
Man, I love this so much, Russ, because when you said flex the muscle of creativity in other areas of your life, and then you get inspired in the business. No, you don't have the creator's block looking at the whiteboard because you're inspired by what's happening in other areas of your life, and so you get into that creative mode. And I think everybody listening knows when you feel alive because you're doing these things. And yet there's definite times where as business owners we kind of get in a kind of a groove, a routine that starts to turn into a rut. And at first it feels good because it's a groove, and then it's like, okay, there's some utility to this because it's a routine, and then it turns into a rut, and it's like, this is a drag, And I talk a lot about this when I'm talking about the rhythm as the rhythm key, because on of the 6 keys, the personal keys are mindset, life vision, and rhythm. And the life vision is about getting balance in the 5 areas of life, and the rhythm is about how we execute to that. But what you just described is very much what I find when people get into their rhythm. They can either have it be a very inspiring, creative, fun thing that fuels them across all the areas of their lives, or it can turn into a rut. And personally, for me, it happens both ways. And I find that, it's like I said, it starts as like, it's beautiful. It's like, it's almost musical. And you get this groove going, and then it kind of turns into a routine, and then it sort of loses energy and turns into a rut. And pretty soon you're feeling frustrated. That's not to say that there isn't value in putting it together. It's just that we've got to inject some energy, some variation, some variety, some spice to it, so that it's fun and it ignites us. And that's what you've just described, in my view. You've just described how to do that in other areas of your life, so that then it blossoms in creativity in your business, and you stand out, you differentiate, you strategically are able to focus in a way that enables you to win in your goals.
Yeah, Clay, I have a question for you because I'm
Yeah, you
super
bet.
curious.
I love
I
it.
mean, your role as a CEO is pretty legendary for guys like me who've grown up in Arizona, started businesses. Well, you guys have been such a leader, and especially your leadership as a staple here.
Thank you.
What do you do to inspire that positive rhythm with creativity? Is there like a
Yeah.
off like habit or thing that you just are like, if I can go do this, I can get that back and feel like I'm in that groove again?
There's so many things. I love the question. Thank you. There's so many different things I do, and they energize me in a little bit different ways. Some of them are about getting out and away from everything in nature,
Mhm.
whether that's beaches or mountains. Just getting away from everything that inspires me. I get energized and creative. I get juice from that. Some of it is seeing. Is getting out and seeing people excel in whatever that is. What I've learned is when I see people doing incredible feats, whether it's athletic or in theater, or you go to
Yeah,
a Broadway play and you get inspired in a way that you just see something different, right?
right.
And you go to a game and you see Booker drop 45, in the first three quarters against the Chicago Bulls from the front row, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" Right?
Witness history, yeah.
That's right. That's right. So seeing things like that, but then it's also being a dad, being a grandpa, being with my grandkids, and just looking in their eyes and seeing my little 5-year-old Nora say something that just cracks me up. That is
Yeah,
inspiring. That gets me to create in different ways. Being with loved ones, I think there's a lot of different things. Travel for sure. When you mentioned, just seeing whether it's architecture or, just seeing history, and seeing
right,
seeing what's
right.
behind the history. I remember last year. It was the first time I'd gone to Versailles, and just standing outside of
Wow.
that and looking at
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it was so inspiring. Like my kids were laughing at me because I was just taking pictures, as like I was taking video and pictures because I was just so moved by it. It was just
right.
incredible. So some of them are things like travel or nature or seeing people excel in all forms of entertainment. Others are friends, family, loved ones. Also, for me, a big thing is my spirituality and getting in touch with my relationship with God. That does something for me because I fundamentally believe that we were put on this earth by a God who wants us to create. So
Yeah.
when I feel that and I'm moved by that, inspired by that, then that gets me more creative. And then the last thing I'll say is, this might sound kind of funny, but what I've learned as a leader, one of the things that inspires my creativity more than anything else is seeing one of our people do something, solve a problem that I have wanted us to solve for a long time. Because you kind of, as as a CEO, all of us know, when you're running a business, there are certain things you want to get fixed, you want to improve, you want
Right.
to get better, and you can't do it all. You can't do everything. And so it is so inspiring, and it gets me into a more creative zone when an employee that I don't even really know very well, I find out this problem got solved. Who did it? That is something that I absolutely love, seeing people make a problem their mission, solve it, and that just it gets me excited to go do things for the company that maybe I hadn't put my mind to or my heart to in a way to create the outcomes we're after.
But I mean, I love it. And like I could just basically say ditto to everything you said. Like if you asked me that same question, it'd be almost identical answers. But with the exception of that last one, what I find is that when we're out of rhythm, what gets us back in rhythm isn't working more. Everything you
Hmm.
mentioned was
Hmm.
outside of business
Yeah.
about that rhythm. And I've made so many mistakes over the year when things aren't working in business. And what I think I need to do is I need to double down on the business. I need to
Yes.
go work longer, have more meetings, send more emails, dive into more data. Maybe I need five more dashboards. We already have 10 dashboards. I need maybe a slice it this way.
Right.
And yet the biggest, most profound flow states I've ever been have been and directly related to business, mind you, like
Mm-hmm.
ideas,
Mm-hmm.
strategy, concepts or whatever, have been when I've been totally outside of that container,
Mm-hmm.
traveling. Like you mentioned, like art and music, concerts are really important to me. I love seeing
Mm-hmm.
live music, same thing. And I just all of a sudden out of nowhere, this idea comes and is like, what if we do it this way?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me get Apple Notes out really quick. I don't want to forget about this. And
Yeah.
so like that to me, when and back to creativity as it pertains to like kind of rhythm is like if you're feeling stuck, I think, always ensure that you know what those things are and go
Yeah.
to those things in small doses, whether it's, waking up an hour earlier to just have some quiet time, with God or whoever, whatever your
Yeah.
morning routine is,
Yep.
or
Yep.
that trip even with friends or family whatever, but you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go hike at nighttime under the stars and just like feel that vibe. That to me is what kind of resets the rhythm game across the board. And it's really counterintuitive, I think, in modern
Totally.
modern hustle culture of work, and you could do it and da 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 da. It's like actually not so much, to
Yeah.
get that progress.
I'm so glad you shared that. In part because I'm in a bit of a grind right now, and I can see right now. Oh yes, I need to let go a little bit. I need to back up. I need to get and there's seasons of this. By the way, we all
Yeah.
understand there's seasons in business, there's seasons in life where this happens. But I especially appreciate this conversation right now because I've been in a season of like you said, more grind, more meetings, more this, more that, and those things squash creativity. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
they're creativity killers. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate how that applies. You're pointing out that all those things that rejuvenate us and inspire us and get us into a mode of creation, most of those things were outside of work, like you said, and so I'm especially appreciative of that. Well, that's fantastic. One last question I have for you is you've actually created a process for people to essentially tap into creativity. And
Yeah.
so what have you learned in the creation of that process that our audience could learn from? And I am going to ask, where can people learn more about you in case people want to try to tap into that process that you've established to help people, you know, hire some more creativity essentially. Because let's face it, sometimes we have a hard time producing enough of it within us and within our teams.
Mhm.
And sometimes we need someone to come in from the outside to help us. They have a different view, a different perspective. They can provide some value that we can't necessarily manufacture inside of us. So what is it that you've learned in that process of creating, I hate to say it this way, but in essence, there's sort of outsourced creativity, right? You're
Yeah.
outsourcing in that way. What would you share with the audience along those lines of what you learned?
Well, we've seen a lot. We've done millions and millions of design requests, uh, and next January, this is being recorded in 2024, so our January 2025 is our 10-year anniversary. Well, big party, which
Congratulations.
you'll be invited to for sure.
Awesome.
Um, but I think where most people get stuck is thinking that everything needs to be perfect or clear when they start creating.
Mm-hmm.
To me, creativity, you mentioned the word process, that's all that it is. And
Mm.
so, what we've tried to do at Design Pickle is make it really easy to get started. From finding the
Mm-hmm.
creative, which you don't have to do, we just give you one matched to your business, to your expertise, what you need, to communicating with them, to the speed in which it happens. Our designs take an average of 1 to 2 days to get a version back. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes same day if you do it early
That's
enough in the
awesome.
day, you
That's
know?
awesome.
And it's not like it's done in a day, like completely, but you get to
Yeah.
see it and you can give feedback. It's much more iterative versus like hiring a freelancer or even one of your employees that are like, all right, in 3 weeks, I'm going to show you a concept. And then 3 weeks
Mm-hmm.
later, you see it and you're like, oh no, that's not at all where I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's normal part of the creative process. But what I would say, not just with Design Pickle, is if you're able to shorten the iteration cycles to a day, two
Yes.
days, even if it's just a small little thing, those first few rounds of creativity are so essential to set you on the right trajectory to
Yes.
be like that, ah, yes, that's what I want moment. And once you have that moment, everyone's creating an alignment. And so by nature, our process was always like iterative because I wanted people to see stuff sooner. I wanted them to feel like it's really responsive. You're not wondering what your creative is doing. But I
Right.
found that like it allows clients to use the work process itself to sort of develop the ideas as you go.
Yeah.
And not be afraid of any penalty too. And like I'm not trying to just totally plug Design Pickle, but I do love the company because it's flat rate. You
Right.
don't get penalized for more revisions, for more concepts, for more. You're like, no, actually, I don't like it at all. Let's go a different direction. Cool. You're going to pay the same price every month. And most people aren't conditioned to that.
Right. Right.
Like there's always this cost of well, if I
Modifications. Right.
especially for outsourced, it's like if I
Yeah.
gotta change it, it's gonna cost me $100 or it's gonna cost me this. So I'm kind of stuck in this weird spot where I'm disincentivized to actually be creative and innovate
Right.
and try new things. So we've flipped that on its head. And um, I will say this too. This is just kind of like a personal beef. With some of my clients, if you're
Yeah.
listening, don't be this person. And every creative in the world will agree with me on this.
Yeah.
Be tough with feedback and don't worry about hurting feelings. Don't be
Mm.
a jerk to your creative, be respectful. There's a great book, Radical Candor. I always recommend
Right.
it on how to give really
Yep.
good feedback. But so many times I see clients who end up canceling or they're like, oh, this isn't working. And I look in their request history because I always am in the data looking and there's positive feedback, nothing. And then I,
Mm.
I don't like it
Mm.
and I'm leaving. And what we discover is that sometimes people are really worried about hurting their designer's feelings. And I'm like, guys, we are professionals. Like I rarely think a designer is going to be personally offended that you don't like the color blue or whatever it is.
Right.
But so many times people are afraid or hesitant to give tough critical feedback. And I would say anyone working with creative teams, creative leaders, creative individuals, constructive, direct, and early feedback is the best gift you can give them. It's
Fantastic.
if you avoid that for whatever reasons, there's, family therapy issues you haven't gotten to and you need that conflict resolution. Don't worry about it. Just go for it because it also builds trust that the creative knows you better. And that's another big piece of the creative process is the better relationship you can have, the
Yeah.
more successful you can be. Which is, like I think really important as you're building teams to do anything is you want to have that
Right.
trust inside of it. And sometimes tough feedback builds the most trust.
That's right, man. There's so many great things there that you shared. The first thing you said that really resonates is that it's the creativity. The creative process is iterative, and
Mhm.
the key thing that I hope everybody heard was the way to really win in that process is to shorten the iterations
Exactly.
and learn very quickly because it's the first two or three iterations that get you most of the way there. And if you can do that very quickly, you are able to
Yeah.
produce so
That's the
much more.
compass on the ship. Like we
Yeah.
go 20 degrees, 103
Yep.
degrees, and then if it starts sailing and you're not right, like, wow, you're going to be in the wrong place.
Yep. So that's the first thing I want to make sure people hear because that is so powerful and getting a service like yours where you can get those very fast iterations, man, it is so powerful to get the creative juices flowing inside of your team, your company. So I love that. The second thing that you're calling out is the importance of sharing honest, candid feedback. And you're sharing how a relationship in your with your client falls apart. But, how many relationships are there where it's good, nothing, end?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just called it out.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just in a design relationship.
Yeah.
It's on teams, it's in families, it's in you name it. And so I really appreciate the point about just having the courage to give straight, fair, caring feedback, right? Doing it in a caring way. You don't have to, my wife and I've been talking about this. You can disagree without being disagreeable, right? There's a way to do this where you say, hey, you give the feedback, but it's not a critical attacking approach. And so I really appreciate the point you're making there and how it applies in so many areas. But the thing that you're really sharing as an expert of creative process in how you stand out as a company by getting a resource that you can very quickly iterate on, I think is super valuable for our people. So I hope that they will hear that and take advantage of what you guys offer. There are other types of things out there, but since I've got you on the show and I care about you and your business and the awesome history we've had, where can people, if people want to get a taste of this, and by the way, what I would tell people, if you work with Design Pickle, learn the process and what it's doing for creativity as much as you're getting a deliverable, right? People will hire something. Oh, I want this thing. Well, notice how it's building creativity in you and your organization. That to me is really, really valuable. So, where can people learn more about your services, about you, Russ? Where can they go?
Okay, I actually got three things.
Great.
Things. You mentioned there's some clients probably listening, and we just launched a new merch store. So I would love to give some clients some free merch. So if you're listening to this and you retweet or promote Clate's podcast, tag Design Pickle, and I'll send you a $50 coupon to get some merch, help Clate's podcast get out there. I'm really excited about this merch store. It's super funny, super cool stuff. Then there's basically, what do you need help with? If you need to expand your team in a really smart and cost-effective way for creativity, designpickle.com is the way to go. If you want to learn more about how to be more creative in your business and life and apply creativity to all areas of your business or life, follow me on any of the social media channels. I'm just Russ Perry on everything except for TikTok, which I got in late. So I'm Russ K. Perry on TikTok. But usually Instagram or LinkedIn is the best way to go on Russ Perry. And I'm posting every day on how to apply creativity, creative thoughts in business, family, all of that kind of stuff. So you got a professional resource for your company and then one for your personal life too.
I love it. So fun. Well, I'm gonna do something a little different here than I normally do when we wrap up these episodes, because you and I are such diehard Suns fans, and literally the season is starting today as we record this. So what's your prediction this year? How many wins for the Suns?
Oh man. Did they change the game count this season? I'm not sure.
No, we got 82 games, and for everybody out there, we've been excited about the Suns for many years, and they keep breaking our hearts. We haven't quite got over the hump.
Gosh, Clay, this is like I feel like, do I be a realist or do I be an optimist here?
I know, exactly.
I think 70% win.
All right.
I think they're going to be at 70%, and I'm just hoping that the team just really wants to play together and there's no dramatics with the roster and everything. And I think the new ownership is doing a lot to invest. So I'm excited to see them with another year under their belt. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm right there with you. I'm at 55 wins this year. I think that's where we're going to be. So I think it's going to be a good season in a really tough Western Conference. And you and I need to get out to a game together. We went a couple years ago to one, and that was a ton of fun. Let's go do it again this year.
Okay, well, sounds like you have older kids, which might mean your nights are available a little bit better. So I might hit you up last minute if one of my guests cancels.
That sounds great. I'm game. Right. I'm game. Hey, Russ, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for everything you've shared about creativity and about helping entrepreneurs get in that flow of creativity, as you've called out, and enabling their business to stand out. But not just creating in their business, but creating in all areas of their life. Not just creating in other areas so it helps their business, but creating in their business so it helps other areas, and everything works together. That's the balanced growth we look for, and you brought some great wisdom here. So appreciate everything you shared. For everybody who's tuned into this episode, make sure that you apply what Russ has been sharing. Check out the resources he's offered, and until next episode, keep growing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe right here on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss a single episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. And hey, if you like this episode, let's get this out to more entrepreneurs. We all know that it is not easy to grow a great business and a great life. And so Let's get this message out to others. Make sure that you hit the like button, that you comment, and that you share it with others so that we can help other entrepreneurs build a great business and a great life as they conquer the chaos. Keep going, keep serving, and keep growing.